My experience with Adobe's telephone tech support. Hey everyone, welcome to Keep Shooting Monday number 103. My name is Greg Cazillo from Cazillo.com. As I just mentioned, coming up later on in the show is my experience today with Adobe's telephone tech support. Going to be coming up with that in a little bit. First, a little bit of news. There's some good articles this week. I thought the first one that I thought was interesting, although not my cup of tea, is a free and open source photography workflow. I am a big Linux fan. I use Linux for all of my web servers. The website is running on Linux, and all of my client websites are running on Linux. I use it every single day in the command line. That means that it's basically just me typing in commands and a blinking cursor staring at me, and that's it. The only GUI-based or GUI, graphical user interface, operating systems that I use are Windows and the Mac, OS 10. So I don't ever see myself switching over to a pure Linux workflow, although it's nice to see that some people actually do. And so this was by Riley Brandt and posted on Petapixel. I talked about an image viewer and monitor calibration, which is always a good thing. You always want to have a calibrated monitor and a calibrated workflow. Talks about different hardware devices, including the Color Monkey and the Spider 3, which he has, and another open hardware one called the Color Hug. I've never heard of that guy. Anyway, another application to download and rename photos. And let me turn off the sound in the background. Custom color profile. Once again, you got to be able to manage your color on your computer. Darktable, which I'm guessing is the Linux version of Lightroom, which I wouldn't mind actually playing with just to see how good it is or bad it is. Maybe there's a Windows version of it. It's hard to say, but I think I might actually try it out, especially with all the issues that Adobe's been having lately with Lightroom. And then, of course, GIMP, which has been around forever and ever, and it is the open source alternative to Photoshop. So if you are on a Linux machine and you need any of those items in your workflow, you might check that out. The next article, once again, another application that's out there called Polar, P-O-L-A-R-R. It is free for the web, and they also have an inexpensive Windows 10 version. I think I saw in here that it was $15. Hold on. I knew it was in here somewhere. Yeah, $15. You can buy it from the Microsoft Store, and you can test it for 30 days as a free trial. So if you don't like it, you don't have to pay the $15. You can just try it out. That's always nice. The old shareware kind of a version, which is cool. Better than the iOS store. I'm glad that Windows built that in anyway. So gives you some options to be able to automatically edit and change some photos. I'm not sure about its RAW support, although just by glancing at the photos and some of the reviews that are out there on it, it's actually pretty good as far as the some of the things that you can do, like there's a dehaze filter, just like Lightroom just got, and so there's some pretty good stuff in there. So you might try it out if you don't have the a full Lightroom subscription or something like that. The one thing about these two different apps is that it's completely separate, where you have to go from app to app to app to app in order to make that work. Whereas with Lightroom and Photoshop, it's only two applications. And you can do all those things. You import, you rename, and you star them, and you modify. You know what I mean, and develop, and then export. And then obviously you would do any additional editing inside of Photoshop. So it's only two applications. And I was actually watching or listening to a podcast today that was actually posted on the Petapixel by Mike James, and he said, look. He said maybe it's time for Lightroom that it just needs a rewrite. It's had 6 versions so far. Personally, I've had a list of things that I've wanted to see inside of Lightroom that has only gotten longer and longer for quite some time, and it hasn't gone anywhere. And so he really thinks, hey, maybe, you know what? Maybe don't scrap it, but just start over, because the code is just maybe getting so unwieldy. You know, millions of lines of code, so much in there that it has to process and go through in order to add these additional features. And even if you have a really high-end machine like he has, he said he has the newest iMac that's running on and it just chugs, even with a ton of RAM and a really good processor, it's still taking its good old time. And now you even have the new GPU support, which you would think even would make a big difference, but it hasn't. GPU is a graphics processing unit, basically your video card, that should help to offload some of those things from the CPU to the GPU, where the GPU is better at graphics, so it should have made a difference. Unfortunately, I have not seen any difference as far as speed. It's probably only kind of making up for the issues that it's had, that Lightroom 6 brought on, and the extra weight of the 6 application that they needed to offload that. And I don't know if it's any faster, maybe even just a touch slower than Lightroom 5. Then again, my catalogs are pretty huge. Just goes back to my wish list of being able to manage multiple catalogs more easily. And so anyway, I'm not going to go over all of that stuff right now. But anyway, you might check out that podcast. It's definitely interesting, and I'll put a link to that down inside of the comments. So the JPEG committee is thinking about adding DRM to JPEG files, or at least the possibility of DRM. I don't think this is a bad idea. I think it could be good. Just give us the option. It's another option. It's something else you can do. The only issue, though, is you still have the problem of a screenshot. There's almost no way around a screenshot for any kind of DRM, any kind of manipulation, metadata, any of those things. You can still take a screenshot and save that image. And screenshots have become so ubiquitous ever since the iPhone came out. Everybody knows you can take a screenshot nowadays, and especially in Snapchat. Everybody knows if you take a screenshot inside of Snapchat, the user that's sending you that photo will be notified of it. So, everybody knows about screenshots anymore. And so it's just such an easy way to copy a photo. So really it comes back to watermarking. That's really the only way to really copyright a photo and keep it from being copied. I actually saw a watermark today. I was looking at some photos and browsing the web looking for news, and the guy actually had those lines all the way across the image, and his logo's smaller and ghosted all over the image. And, it's actually something that I may end up doing and changing up in my photos, because, you don't know how many of those images are actually being copied or done anything with, So it might be something that's the only way around it. Then it's basically you're just making it harder. It's the same as the locks in your house or the lock on your car door. You're not keeping out the thieves. You're just keeping out the general public, or you're making it harder for someone to get in and break in and to steal your stuff, or to steal the car, or to get your stuff out of your house, break into your house, whatever. So there's always a way to get into a house. And in fact, as a volunteer firefighter, we're trained to break into your house in 30 seconds or less, a minute or less. And so anybody can do it with the right tools. Same with your car. You have a locksmith get into your car like that, or or some cops are even trained with that. How to get into a vehicle really quickly without doing any damage. You wouldn't even know it. So a friend of mine posted on Facebook that said, yeah, I live in a really great area out in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, but she said, well, she was looking around in there. She usually doesn't lock her car doors, but she realized that, hey, somebody stole her iPod out of her car. And so, it's just a matter of somebody's going to break into it. Somebody's going to find a way around that DRM, but it's better than nothing. Yeah, it could be a waste of time, so somebody could break into it, but hey, it's something, it's something. Anyway, Sigma has a new 20mm 1.4 DG lens. This thing looks ultra sharp, has a really good price point at under $1,000. I think was it $900, $950, something like that. Looks like a super sharp $899 at B&H. looks like it's going to be a powerhouse of a lens, and it's giving the OE manufacturers, Nikon, Canon, Sony, a run for their money as far as their glass is concerned. And I think this is great to see more competition. And Sigma is such a great company. They have really good, excellent glass and a wide range of glass. And so if you're looking at, you really want high quality stuff, make sure you're looking at Sigma to see if they're the right way to go for you, and if they have a lens that fits your budget and the features that you need. So check that out. I'm not a big a fan of the word drone, quote unquote. Technically, a drone. It's not a drone. Technically, it's a UAV or a quadcopter. Anyway, supposedly they're talking. There's some rumors out there that are saying that the government, the FAA, is going to require registration of UAVs for any kind of photography. And so I think that would actually be a good thing, because if you register it, that means that you have additional, basically they can always come back to you. It's going to have a signature. That means there's going to be less people doing the things that they shouldn't do. Basically, it's, all planes are registered, your cars are registered, yourself is registered for a driver's license. I don't necessarily see this as an issue, because there's not going to be millions of them, and yeah, it'll cut down on some of the problems. So I think that's probably a good thing. Back to, well, actually, before I get back to Adobe, Canon's prototype ISO 300,000 sensor can see in near darkness. You have got to check out the photos that Petapixel posted of this. It is seriously almost like night and day. The quality of this and the tiny, tiny little bits of light that this sensor is going to be able to pick up is awesome. And again, it's just a step in the right direction. More competition means better for us in the long run. So I applaud Canon for pushing that envelope all the time. So one more thing, or back to Adobe, I should say. Supposedly Adobe is going to roll back to the old import process. We will see how that goes. I don't mind the new import, because I never really had an issue with the old one. Obviously, I'm a power user. My images are already in the folder because I copy them over manually, either in Finder or Explorer, create my folders manually. I do all that stuff on purpose because I don't trust Lightroom to move my photos for me into the place where I want them to be all the time. So that's why I do it. That's the one thing that I do manually, and then I let Adobe Lightroom do all the rest in between, my metadata, adding metadata, and I add some either medium or high contrast in the tone curve as a default. So anyway, that's they're talking about bringing it back to the old way, which maybe it was easier, I don't know, but add the option, but then again, the option means that there's more code that it has to go through. So it's hard to say whether that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Back to my review of Lightroom's telephone support. So I don't want to say I had an issue, but I had some questions about Lightroom, and they both related to the secondary display. So I was on the phone for 49 minutes, and I made the call. Number one, you got to navigate through the web of press 1 for this, and 2 for that, and 3 for this, and 6 for that, and that is just such a pain. I just can't understand why companies have to do that and just force us to do that anymore. Anyway, so I had finally made it through there. Then, oh, you're going to have to wait, either hold or we'll call you back. Okay, fine, I'll hold. And they make you press a button and do something before you're just left on hold, which, once again, it's annoying, but fine, you got to do it. So next thing is then I finally get someone on the phone, and I can barely understand a single word this lady is saying. I had no idea what country she was from, but for a company like Adobe that's making billions off of us, especially with the new subscriptions, you would think that there would be an option to be able to talk to someone in your native language, in your native country, and to be able to actually get your point across and have them understand. The first person, I explained it 2 or 3 times. She had no idea what I was saying. She was asking me questions that totally did not relate to the questions that I was asking. And then I said, well, look, is there someone I can talk to that's American? And she put me on hold for probably 5 or 10 minutes. And then she came back and, to give me about 2 more minutes and someone will be on. I said, fine. And then this other guy came on, and she didn't do a warm transfer. She didn't tell him what was going on, what I was requesting. So that meant that I had to spend another, minute explaining to this guy. This guy spoke a little bit better English. His English was better, but his understanding of the English language and the intricacies of the things that I was asking, and he totally didn't get it. So I had to explain the same question to him 4 different times for the first question and 3 different times for the second question. I had to go through the entire thing to make sure that he understood. And my question was, in Lightroom, and maybe hopefully someone else knows this answer, from what he finally told me, that there is no way to do this in either case. That number one, how do you control which monitor your secondary display inside of Lightroom is showing on? When you're in the full screen mode, from what I can tell, when you have more than 2 monitors selected, there's no way to be able to select which one of your 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 displays the secondary display window, quote unquote, is showing on. You can when it's showing in a windowed mode, but not when it's showing in full screen mode. And so when I'm working here in the studio, I have a projector hooked up, and I also have a third display hooked up so that I can see what's on that projector, so that I don't have to turn around and look at the screen behind me, and just because of the way that the studio is set up. So I really was hoping that that was going to be the case, that it would help. No such luck. Can't do it. They can't help me. So it was nothing there. Then the other question, it's something else to do with secondary display. I'm so frustrated from the call today. I literally just got off the phone with them not that long ago, and I kind of forgot what the question was. What the heck was it? So, secondary display. Geez, now I completely forget. Choosing the monitor. Choosing the monitor, secondary display. Hold on, let me find out. All right, now I remember. So the other thing was, how do you keep the secondary display window from turning off? So here's my scenario. I have 3 monitors set up. This one over here behind me is actually the secondary display window, and that one is being duplicated onto the projector, which is showing on the wall over here. Clients are sitting back here so that I can see them. We have eye contact together, which is good for sales, that kind of thing. But that leaves the display of the screen behind me, and I don't want to have to turn around. So that's the best way to do it as my phone starts ringing. So what I'm looking to do then is switch. So I would have the secondary display on this screen back here, as you see, okay, and then Lightroom here on this screen. So my one question was, how do I make it choose in between the two? How do I make it choose in between the 2 devices? In other words, I want to make this in full screen mode, choose which screen it's on. That was one question. I can't do that. The other question was, how do I, when I switch to another application like OneNote, which I use for all of my note-taking activities, that secondary display back there, window, just turned off. And that does me absolutely no good. That means that their photo that was being shown is now not being shown on that screen, and they're not going to understand why that's being turned off. So, again, I spent 49 minutes on the phone with the 2 people, and then some time while I was on hold. They totally didn't understand what I was saying, and they finally answered with, "No, we can't help you," at the end of the conversation, and that just, it really frustrated me. And I just feel as if I'm paying this much money every single month, that I should have either a limited amount of time or spend 5 minutes with a real help support person on the phone. You know, it's just one of those things where I went to Google and I typed in Adobe support, and there was a phone number right there in front of me in huge letters. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to call instead of trying to find this, fill in these, you know, the help form that takes forever and go all the way down the line. I'm just not a fan of the overseas support, and I really wish that Adobe would spend the money to do it here in America. It could make a lot more, it would make a lot of people happy. It would give a lot of people additional jobs. I'm sure that they could train them and they would easily be able to do it and handle it. I don't know. Very, very, very frustrated Adobe Creative Cloud subscriber right now. Another question from Jerry over in the forum. I'm always struggling to get correct white balance. Yes, I know the best way is probably to do custom white balance in camera, but I can get confused with that as well. I don't have a gray card, so I use a white sheet of paper. If I'm using a flash, say for portraits, do I fire the flash or leave it turned off? I don't know what kind of exposure I need. Do I need to overexpose to get the paper bright white, then do a custom setting off of that? Then how do you correctly do it in post-editing in Photoshop and Lightroom? I can never get it if I use the white balance eyedropper to do so in mid-gray, which would be a number around 125-ish, question mark. I've had some luck adjusting each RGB channel using curves. But what if I want to get more consistent, especially for a portrait, to get correct skin tones? Thank you for your question, Jerry. Another really good set of questions, and I'm going to go over each and every single one of the little parts. First, you do not want to be setting custom white balance. Every time the light changes, you add a little bit more flash, or you move around, or the sun goes in, or you move in a different part of a room with different lighting, or you get closer to a window, farther from a window. Any of those times, you're going to have to do another custom white balance setting. Do not waste your time. Shoot raw and set it on auto white balance. Done. Next, you say that you don't have a gray card, so you use a white sheet of paper, which is a really, really bad idea. Now, here is why. Okay, we have two different white surfaces here. Okay, both of them are really white. Okay, from what we can see, making sure they're both in the camera shot. Okay, this is a white sheet of paper, which is actually a receipt from somewhere that somebody printed, and then this is actually the card that came in the Epson 70. The V850 scanner that actually holds the reflective pieces down on the glass flat. And so when you look at these, they probably look pretty white, but then once you put them together, maybe it doesn't come across on camera very well, but they are very different. This is a lot, this is a little bit warmer. This has a little bit cooler tone to it. And so using a white sheet of paper is not a good way to do it. You should definitely shy away from doing that. All right. What's the correct way to do it? The correct way to do it is either to get one of the spider checkers from Data Color, okay, with a full chart like this with all of your colors. You can also use that in conjunction with, or just use this by itself, one of their spider cubes, both of which are inexpensive. Obviously, the cube is going to be even cheaper. You can take the cube and you can put it up on top of the chart. And what this does, you take a picture of that, you get all of the colors. You also get black point, white point, middle gray, and then a highlight. Okay, so you get all of those inside of this one setup, and you can reliably set all of your colors from this. What you would do is you would take a picture of this each time that the light changes or you're in a different scene, and you just use that photo as a reference, then apply that white balance to the other photos in the scene. This one, I love this chart. I love this system. I also have the one from Great Tag Macbeth, which I probably had for 6 or 8 years, 10 years I've been using it. I like this one better though because it closes up like a book. You're not going to mess it up. I love the fact that you have the little shiny thing here on the top, little chrome ball. The little chrome ball right there that really lets you see your brightest area, your very brightest white and your specular whites. So that's really nice. I love that cube. I think that's a great idea. But there's nothing wrong with just having just the chart too, and choosing any of the grays in order to use your eyedropper on. Typically, I'll use one of these two of the lighter grays to put my eyedropper on, and that gives me a really good middle gray, and that's the way that I do it. Now, when I'm shooting a portrait, I will rarely use that accurate color like that. That's the flip side of this, is that for portrait, that kind of thing, I just did a portrait session yesterday. I didn't shoot that thing at all, and I know my white balance is going to be all over the board. But I have a calibrated monitor. I use here's my spider right here, which I use my spider for to calibrate the monitors. So as I have a color calibrated monitor, and actually I have another part of the review of the V850 with some additional software that I got from LaserSoft. It's called Silverfast. It allowed me to calibrate my scanner, the V850, and my printer, my Epson 7800, within probably about 5 minutes of one another. And so now I know my monitors are calibrated, my scanner's calibrated, and my printer's calibrated. That means everything has a super accurate color, and I know if it looks one way on my screen, it's going to look that same way when I print it out. And so that is super important. Make sure you're calibrating your screens, all right? Also do it every time you need to go and edit your photos. You can't just do it every 2 weeks or every month or something like that. If the sun starts going down, you need to readjust it again. You're working at night, you're working during the day. The available light in the room makes a huge difference how you see the light on the screen coming out of the screen, and so that makes a difference. You need to be doing it on a regular basis. Basically, every time you need to do any kind of color critical adjustments on a photo, you need to be calibrating your screen. So back to his question, am I using Flash? If you want to use Flash, use Flash. If you're worried about the way that it looks, then you may need to balance it. You may need to add some additional filters onto the front of your Flash. The Hano ones are really nice and inexpensive. You can get a nice little holder for them. Basically, you take those and you pick whichever color you need, whichever shade you need to match it to the rest of the available light in the room, and it'll make your daylight balance flash match the rest of the room. So that is a nice way to do it. It doesn't really bother me usually, unless it's a real deep tungsten, something like that, and that's when I'll really put it on there. Or if I'm doing some kind of product or indoor photography, like maybe a kitchen or something like that, because I do a lot of photos for contractors, then it'll make a difference, and I really want to match those lighting tones so that I can get a nice even colored light all the way across, because that makes a difference for cabinetry and products and that kind of thing. So that's when I'll do that, and that's also when I will use my data color spider checker chart, so to make sure that I get that good accurate color. So if it's too late and you've already shot the photos, you don't have a reference chart, my suggestion is start out with a daylight balance. Set it in Lightroom to either daylight or an indoor setting. Get it close. Find something that should be white or should be gray or should be black. Drop that eyedropper somewhere on that photo to get close, and then adjust it a little bit from there, but only after you're calibrating your screen. I cannot stress that enough. You got to calibrate your screen first in order to be able to do this accurately and consistently. Then get that and apply it to all of your photos, and it should be looking pretty close and pretty good from that point. And but again, for portraits, I'm not going for accuracy. I'm going for pleasing look. And so some photos are going to be super warm and way too yellow, and then other ones are going to be a little bit on the cooler side. This time of the year, we're going for a lot of warmer tones with the fall, that kind of thing, with the fall leaves and in portraiture. And it also depends on how I like the photo. Maybe I'm going complete black and white. Maybe I'm going split tone. It really depends. But if I want more of an accuracy kind of a thing, or a closer normal balance, like maybe for a headshot, for something outdoor, like a business headshot or something like that, without a lot of creative freedom inside of it, I'm just going to go with, I'm going to hit daylight, and then I'm going to adjust it a little bit warmer from there, basically season it to taste. So I hope I've answered your question. If you guys do have any additional questions with editing that stuff in Lightroom, maybe I'll put together a video of how to do that, how I do it when I'm setting that inside of Lightroom, or whether questions with calibrating, that kind of thing, whether it's the devices, scanner, printer, monitors, any of those things you have questions on, anything I talk about, I gladly answer those questions and keep them coming. So that is it for today. I think it's going to be plenty long of a show. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know if you have any additional questions, and we will see you next week for Keep Shooting Monday number 134. Thanks, guys. Keep shooting.